Hey guys, Miss Pomeleo here. Welcome to this video. This time we're going back to basics, an introduction to staff reading. First of all, what is a staff? A staff in music is made up of 5 horizontal lines separated by 4 evenly spaced spaces. In order to read our notes on a staff, we have to first identify a clef. There are 2 main clefs that you will see in choir. The first is a treble clef, seen here. Usually a treble clef is related to the higher voices in a choir, sopranos, altos, or 1s and 2s. You also might see a bass clef, which looks like this. This is related to the lower voices of the choir, tenors and basses, or part 3s and 4s. So whenever you see a line of music like this, the first thing you do is identify which clef you will be reading. In this case, we see our treble clef, which clearly means that this piece of music would be for higher voices in the choir. Our next step is to refer to our musical alphabet. Unlike the traditional English alphabet, the musical alphabet starts on A and ends on G. Then it repeats over and over and over again. You will never see a note that is called H or Z. So we've identified our clef and we've reviewed our musical alphabet. Next, let's talk about the spaces of a treble clef staff. When reading lines or spaces on a treble or bass clef staff, we will always start from the bottom of the staff to the top. When reading the spaces of the treble clef staff, we have this handy word spelled out for us, F-A-C-E, spelled from the bottom to the top, face. So whenever we see a note on the first space in a treble clef staff, we know that it will be F. The second space will always be A, third space C, and so on. Next, we have the names of the treble clef lines. Remember, there are 5 lines on our staff. If we spell from the bottom to the top, we have E, G, B, D, F. And unfortunately, that doesn't give us a handy word like face. But there is another way that we can remember the names of these lines. Every good boy does fine. Just like with the word face, we are spelling from the bottom to the top. You could also say, every good boy deserves fudge, Elvis's guitar broke down Friday, or anything else that you can come up with that might help you remember. Things are a little bit different with the bass clef, although we still spell from the bottom to the top. The spaces are A, C, E, G. Once again, we do not have a handy word like face, but we do have all cows eat grass, all cars eat gas, or anything else that you could come up with that might help you remember the spaces of the bass clef staff. For the lines, we have G, B, D, F, A. Good boys do fine always. Or my personal favorite, Gummy Bears Die for America. So you might be wondering what the difference is between the letter names of the staff and our solfege letters. The biggest difference is that the letter names on a staff, treble or bass clef, will never change. If you're reading a treble clef staff, the first line from the bottom will always be called E, no matter what. The first space will always be F, the second line G, and so on. With solfege, however, it changes based on the song that you are singing. For example, in one song you might find that your second line is Do, which means the rest of the solfege is as follows. But in a completely different song, you might find that your third space C is Do, which means that this is the solfege for that song. So what's the importance of learning the letter names of a staff if the solfege always changes? Well, the letter names on the staff are associated with something called absolute pitch. So when I see letter C on the treble clef staff, I know for a fact that if I press the key above it, as seen on the piano, I will get a specific pitch every time. If I see first space F, I know for a fact that it relates to the key on the piano above it, and it will always give me the specific pitch for F. The final thing we need to talk about before wrapping up our discussion is ledger lines. A ledger line is a note that exists either above or below the 5-line staff. Here's an example. This note exists below the 5-line staff, and it has a line running through it. So we know that it is considered a lined note and not a space. So how do we read it? The easiest way is to find the note that is closest to it that we know the name of. So here's our musical alphabet. We know that that first line is E. Every good boy deserves fudge. So if we identify E in our musical alphabet, we know that this unknown note is below E. So we will go backwards in the musical alphabet. The note right below E in the musical alphabet is D, but that would be the imaginary space in between line E and the unknown note. If we go one more line down, we find that the unknown note is C. So essentially, you're skipping line space, until you land on the unknown note. And it's always easiest to start with something that you know, like line E in this instance. Please keep in mind that staff reading takes loads of practice, just like anything else in music. The last thing we need is for you to feel frustrated. There's plenty of time to practice this, and practice does make progress.